South Korea's foreign minister and the top U.S. envoy to the UN discuss ways to further squeeze North Korea. As the dust settles on one of the nastiest U.S. presidential debates in living memory, Republicans worry about the growing cracks in their party. And two economists from the UK and Finland win the Nobel Prize for their work on so-called contract theory. These and more coming right up.
Hello, it's Tuesday, October 11th here in Seoul. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Hwang Ji-hye. Seoul's foreign minister and Washington's top envoy to the United Nations have agreed to push for more powerful and independent sanctions against North Korea for its continual nuclear and missile provocations. On fresh multilateral sanctions by the UN Security Council, Samantha Power said the Council will take its time to craft the best possible measures. Kwon So-ah has our top story.
After wrapping up a meeting with U.S. Ambassador to the UN Samantha Power on Monday, South Korea's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se says Seoul and Washington are in talks of bringing up extra sanctions on North Korea.
Seoul and Washington are coordinating independent sanctions on various levels, which I also discussed with Ambassador Power today. South Korea's government is also examining much stronger independent sanctions than those imposed in March.
Minister Yoon added the EU and Japan are also working on independent sanctions and that such measures come at a timely moment as they will maximize the effects of other sanctions. The minister also deemed Ambassador Power's visit to South Korea as opportune, as the UN Security Council is in deep talks on drafting a new set of sanctions on North Korea's fifth nuclear test last month. Ambassador Power told reporters that the UN Security Council is working around the clock to adopt a new resolution as quickly as possible. However,
we are for a resolution that makes a substantive difference and changes the calculus over time of the North Korean leadership. So we are not going to sacrifice or shortchange our ambition to rush this out. We want this resolution to be practically impactful on the ground.
Regarding cooperation from China and Russia, 2 of the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council, the UN envoy said the U.S. will exert all possible political influence to ensure support from all council members. Power also met with Unification Minister Hong Yong-pyo on the same day, emphasizing the importance of the work at the ministry, saying unification is what everyone wishes to see. She expressed her impression of her visit to the truce village of Panmunjom on the inter-Korean border Sunday, where she felt how close the threat of nuclear and missile tests are, and also underscored the urgency of dealing with families separated since the Korean War. The ambassador returns to New York Tuesday, wrapping up a 4-day trip to South Korea. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Now, some had been expecting a provocation, but North Korea opted to stay quiet on its special party anniversary on Monday. That said, South Korea and the United States are taking no chances, holding a joint military exercise this week. Kim Hyun-bin reports.
The United States has deployed a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, USS Ronald Reagan, to the peninsula for a joint naval exercise with South Korea. The 6-day Invincible Spirit exercise kicked off on Monday to send a warning to North Korea over its recent nuclear and missile provocations.
The Invincible Spirit exercise will run through October 15th on all of South Korea's coasts. The exercise serves as a warning to North Korea and showcases the Allies' counterstrike abilities in addition to enhancing our joint operational capabilities.
The Allies have mobilized dozens of warships and submarines for the drills, including Aegis destroyers, surveillance planes, and U.S. F-18 Hornet fighter jets. This is the first time the Allies have engaged in exercises on all coasts of the peninsula at the same time. In the East and West Seas, the Allies have conducted maritime operations to counter North Korean commandos infiltrating the maritime demarcation line. Off the southwestern coast, the Allies will conduct anti-submarine and aircraft drills, as well as precision-guided strike operations. The drills come after an increase in provocations from North Korea, including its fifth nuclear test and multiple ballistic missile launches. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
And the United States has reiterated that plans are in motion to deploy the THAAD missile defense system to South Korea. The announcement was posted on the White House's We the People website in response to a petition signed by more than 100,000 South Korean activists who are opposed to the deployment. In the petition, the activists said the deployment is a controversial move that will escalate tension in the region by provoking North Korea, China, and Russia. The White House defended its decision, calling it a way to improve the missile defense posture of the U.S.-South Korea alliance. It also emphasized that the deployment of THAAD reflects Washington's ironclad commitment to South Korea's defense. The Korean government is mulling charging the crew of a Chinese fishing boat with attempted murder. This after their vessel, which was fishing illegally in Korean waters, rammed into and sank a Korean Coast Guard boat last week. Lee Min-young reports.
The Korean Coast Guard says it's looking at charging the operators of a Chinese fishing boat with attempted murder after they attacked members of the Coast Guard on the open seas. The Chinese fishermen are still at large, but they're wanted for intentionally crashing their 100-ton vessel into a comparatively tiny Coast Guard speedboat last Friday in the West Sea, as officers attempted to stop them for fishing illegally. One Coast Guard officer dove into the water before the speedboat sunk and was soon rescued unhurt, but he could have been killed if he wasn't so quick.
When they attacked us with their 10-meter boat, I thought that means they probably wouldn't care if they killed someone, or they might have even wanted to kill.
The South Korean government has made a formal request to the Chinese government to search for the attackers and their vessel. The number of Chinese boats illegally fishing within South Korea's exclusive economic zone has risen in recent years. More than 200 boats a day appeared in the West Sea in June. After a lull of a couple months, they sprang back into action in September for blue crab season, with an average of 100 boats spotted a day.
Chinese boats always have been around, and they continue to fish illegally in our waters. But what worries me is how all of a sudden there are so many of them.
The Korean Coast Guard vowed last month to dispatch more boats to guard the area around the Han River estuary near the border between South and North Korea in a bid to rein in the poachers. But some have called for even tighter controls. Other countries, including Indonesia, Argentina, and Russia, are rooting out illegal fishing by sinking the trespassers. The Korean Coast Guard responded to those calls on Sunday, saying they'll consider using weapons. Lee Min-young, Arirang News.
There are just a couple of days to go before this month's monetary policy meeting at the Bank of Korea that's still under pressure to lower rates, despite previous cuts that have left it sat at a record low. The pressure is building due to the slow pace of economic recovery. And in regards over how to address the issue, Korea's two economic chiefs appear to be passing the buck of responsibility to the other. Shin Se-min has the details.
There's not much room left for additional fiscal measures. These were words from Korea's top economic policymaker before reporters in Washington, where he's attending conferences hosted by the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. Finance Minister Yoo Il-ho said there will not be any further government spending plans unless variables immediately come into play. He added that the government has already laid out expansionary fiscal policies by drawing up a supplementary budget, expanding next year's fiscal spending, and committing an extra $9 billion by year's end. But when it comes to monetary policy, the minister suggested he has quite a different outlook. In an earlier statement, he said although low key rates have led to a rise in household debt, the current amount is still manageable, hinting there's more room for easing. But it appears this sentiment is not quite shared with Korea's top central banker. BOK Governor Lee Ju-yeol, who's also attending the same economic gatherings, said that while there's still room for additional rate cuts, monetary policy alone cannot prop up the economy. He also said there is more room to expand fiscal policies as Korea is in the top tiers when it comes to fiscal soundness. Korea's central bank will make its monthly rate announcement this Thursday at a time when a potential U.S. rate hike is adding more pressure for further rate adjustments. The current rate stands at an all-time low of 1.25%, but there are still great concerns that more easing would exacerbate the household debt load that stands at over $1.1 trillion as of the end of June. 신세민, Arirang News.
Samsung Electronics has temporarily halted production of its Galaxy Note 7 amid multiple reports the supposedly safe replacement smartphones were catching fire. The latest move comes just a few weeks after the Korean tech titan recalled millions of the older devices. Hwang Ho-jun reports.
Since the news broke, the media have been trying to get the Korean tech giant to comment. But Samsung responded to the news without much elaboration and only after the local stock market operator, the Korea Exchange, demanded public disclosure.
Samsung is adjusting the supply volume to conduct a careful examination and reinforce quality control.
The halt in production will likely hamper Samsung's efforts to recover from its recent global recall crisis, which followed several reports of Note 7s catching fire due to faulty batteries less than a month after it first went on sale in August. In Korea, about 85% of the devices made before the recall have been retrieved. Samsung then started to distribute replacement devices in early October. Earlier this week, however, a replacement phone caught fire on a plane in the US, forcing passengers to evacuate and reigniting the controversy. At least 8 cases of fire involving the replacement Note 7 have been reported since sales resumed, 5 in the US, 1 each in South Korea, China, and Taiwan. Korean investigators concluded that the incident in Korea was caused by a strong external shock or pressure on the device. The results of investigations into the other 7 cases have yet to be announced. In the meantime, 2 major mobile carriers in the US, AT&T and T-Mobile, have reportedly halted sales of replacement Note 7s because of the safety concerns. The state-run Korean Agency for Technology and Standards said it is closely monitoring safety issues of the new Note 7 devices, though it has yet to reach any decision on another recall. Hwang Ho-jun, Arirang News.
Looks like Donald Trump has some serious work to do with just 4 weeks remaining before the U.S. presidential election. In the latest NBC Wall Street Journal poll taken after the release of a 2005 video of him making sexually aggressive comments about women, Trump is trailing Hillary Clinton by 14 points in a heads-up race. The Democratic candidate had 52% to Trump's 38%. It's a significant hike compared to the head-to-head matchup by the same poll released last month, where Clinton was ahead by 7 points. The poll of 500 registered voters has a margin of error of plus or minus 4.6%. Meanwhile, Republican House Speaker Paul Ryan said he was sickened by what he heard Trump say in the video, announcing that he will not defend the billionaire businessman anymore. He says he will spend the next month protecting his party's congressional majorities instead. The 5th Nobel Prize of the year was announced in Stockholm on Monday. Kim Hae-sung helps us get better acquainted with the 2 winners and shed light on why their work deserved the recognition in economic sciences.
2 economists, British-born Oliver Hart and Finland-born Bengt Holmstrom, have won the Nobel Prize for Economic Sciences for their work on contract theory. The Nobel Committee said their work sheds light on how contracts can ensure that parties are bound by mutual interest by balancing needs and demands.
Contract is really a very fundamental phenomenon that I think affects all of us in society.
The 68-year-old Hart, an economics professor at Harvard, researched whether providers of public services like schools or prisons should be publicly or privately owned.
The 67-year-old Holmstrom, a professor at MIT, has worked on employment contracts and helped show how to formulate contracts for executives. Speaking to reporters over the phone, Holmstrom said he felt very grateful.
No, the short answer is I certainly did not expect it. At least, at this time. So I was very surprised, and I'm very happy, of course.
The fifth Nobel Prize of the year, economics, was not among the original Nobel Prize categories, but was added in 1968 by the Swedish Central Bank. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News.
Oil prices have shot up to their highest level so far this year after Russian President Vladimir Putin announced Russia is ready to join OPEC's output cap. Speaking at the World Energy Congress in Istanbul on Monday, Putin said Russia would cooperate with OPEC to come up with a deal where production would be frozen or even potentially cut. Brent crude, the international benchmark, hit a one-year high, up more than 3% to slightly over $53 a barrel. West Texas Intermediate crude oil futures were also up 3% plus to more than $51. OPEC agreed at an informal meeting last month to discuss freezing output when it holds its formal meeting in Vienna at the end of November. And that wraps it up for now. I'll be back in less than 2 hours for more news updates, so do stay tuned and goodbye for now.